Yes, thank you, Bill. My name is Virginia McKenzie from District 5030, and we are very pleased to introduce cause based clubs, all about cause based clubs. And we have some serious star power with us today. We have past District Governor Tom Gump from District 5950 in Minneapolis. And Tom is very passionate about growing Rotary membership through forming new innovative Rotary clubs, Rotaract clubs, and satellite clubs. He founded, co founded, or helped form dozens of new and creative clubs around the world, including the first ever Rotary club in the world to serve veterans, the first Rotary club in the world to focused on ending human trafficking, the Rotary Club of Network for Empowering Women, which was featured in the North American Rotary magazine, the Kaleidoscope Rotaract Project to serve those with autism and their families, the Rotaract E-Club for the environment, the first ever cause-based international Rotaract E-Club focused on the environment, the Rotary Club of Global Travelers, which was featured in this month's North American Rotary magazine, and the Minnesota Pride Rotary Club. Tom was one of only 20 North American Rotary leaders selected by Rotary International past president Mark Maloney and Rotary International membership staff to participate in a new club development summit, and was subsequently named as a Zone 29 Innovative Club Advocate. Tom is one of the only 500 Rotarians in the world to be named Membership Society for new member sponsors for bringing in more than 50 active members into his club, which puts him at a gold level for this society. Tom now inspires others around the world and helps them form their own new and innovative Rotary clubs. He speaks regularly on the topic of membership at Rotary Club, district, multi-district, zone, and international events. He spoke at this year's Rotary International Assembly and serves as a breakout panelist at Rotary International virtual conventions. He's on the PETS Alliance list of most popular speakers. North American Rotary Magazine and other Rotary International magazines have written about Tom, Tom's tips for attracting and retaining members, and some of the clubs he has started also have been featured as part of cover stories. Rotary regional magazines have published articles by him. His articles have also appeared in Rotary's blog, Rotary Voices. Tom was the winner of Zones 28 and 32 Individual Membership and Innovation Award for promoting new cause-based clubs throughout the world. Tom has served as general chair of last year's Zone Institute and was a training leader at this year's Rotary International Assembly. He and his wife, Catherine, will this May serve as Rotary International President, Shekhar Mehta's President Representative to the Philippines. And now for my personal introduction of Tom Gump, which is Tom has sparked many clubs, including mine, the Rotary Club of the Pacific Northwest, Ending Sex Trafficking. 2 years ago, there was a Rotary Response webinar that I attended. And at the end, Tom got to make an announcement about the Rotary Club Ending Human Trafficking that was starting in Minneapolis. And I remember I was on a walk. I was not watching the presentation. I was just listening. But as soon as he said it, I stopped. I opened up my phone. I took a screenshot of Tom and I pinched in to get his district number off of his Rotary logo wear, 5950. And I hunted him down on social media and got myself an invitation to that Rotary Club and actually attended that club for a year while I gained the courage to start Rotary Club of the Pacific Northwest, Ending Sex Trafficking. I also know that Bill McCauley is on this call, who has also been inspired by Tom Gump to start a satellite club for Veterans Affairs. So, Tom, you are definitely making an impact. It is such a joy to know you, be inspired by you, be supported by you. I am so excited for this presentation today. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you so much, Virginia, for having me. That wasn't only the longest introduction I've ever had, it was the nicest. It was the most kind. Thank you. And it's great to be with our Rotary family and friends in Seattle, virtually, but hopefully we'll get together soon. And I see some friends on the line. Well, thank you, first of all, for inviting me. And Bill, I'm excited to talk about the Veterans Club. And when I heard you were going to be here, I used our Veterans Club here as an example on how to start a Rotary cause-based club. And we have Lloyd Campbell, who's actually from my district, and he's going to be talking about the autism club we started. And then my friend Mianne Solomon from the Philippines is here. So I'm really happy to have you all here. So when Virginia called and said she wanted me to talk, I usually say, well, what do you want me to talk about? Because different districts want me to talk about different things. And she wanted me to talk about cause-based clubs. And I was pretty excited because I love talking about cause-based clubs. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. Why? Because the most motivational factor in the world is a cause. You know, in Rotary, we lose about 10% of our people during their first year. During the first 3 years, we lose 52% of our members. After the third year, they usually stay because they have those lifelong friendships that we all have in our clubs. So really a good way to start a club, or if you don't want to start a club, to reimagine your current club and adding a cause to it could help. We did that in Texas, where we actually had a Toastmasters club and it lost all its members and was going to turn in its charter. And we decided to turn it into a veterans club. And that was the second ever veterans club in the world. And now it's doing great. So what are we going to talk about today? Virginia said she wanted me to talk about all about cause-based clubs. So I thought back and I reflected and I said, well, what's the most important things that I would want to know if I'm going to start a cause-based club or I'm going to add a cause to my current club? Well, I think why is very important. You know, to keep people motivated, they have to know why they want to do something. So we're going to talk about why form a cause-based club. Then we're going to talk about how, and I promised to try not to be too boring about that. We won't go too deep into the paperwork, but we'll talk a little bit about what you need to do. Then what I thought would be fun, which I usually don't do, is talk about the mistakes I've learned when forming cause-based clubs, because I figure you can learn a lot from what I did wrong, and then you won't have to suffer the way I did when you're starting your cause-based club. And of course, anytime you have a question, even in the middle, feel free to, not interrupt, but feel free to ask me a question. And Mike or Virginia, who's ever moderating, can stop me and I'll be able to answer, because I want this to be a little bit interactive. We're going to talk about what a lot of people want to know is, what are the keys to success? What do I need to actually have this work? And then where are the opportunities? Where do we see around the world cause-based clubs starting? What kinds? So why form a cause-based club? Well, it grows Rotary quicker. It retains members longer, because remember, we got that cause. It attracts younger members. It reaches out into the community and brings new people into Rotary. And it gives us a great opportunity to partner with other organizations to form new Rotary clubs. So that's why, but let me go into a little bit about each one of these to prove to you that these are the reasons why. If you think about it, grow Rotary quicker. When you start a Rotary club, you have to have 20 members to start a club. And Virginia was kind enough to mention our Network for Empowering Women Rotary Club. But we added 50 members, 50 members at one time. For me to bring in 50 members one at a time into my current club, or for you to do that, would take some time. But you just grow Rotary quicker that way. We talked about, if you have a cause, people stay there because they're all about the cause. Nobody wants to join a club that doesn't do anything, but people joined Virginia's new club to end sex trafficking because they wanted to work on that particular issue. It does attract younger members. You know, I'm in a traditional club. I love my traditional club. You have number 4 in your district. And I would never leave my traditional club, even though I started other clubs and people have asked me to join other clubs. I stay with my clubs because I love the people I do service with. But sometimes my club might not be the best club for everybody. You know, we meet on a Tuesday morning, we go to a country club, fixed cost meal. You know, this past Saturday, we did a service project and we picked up trash along the highway. Well, if you go up to a millennial and say, join my club, you can pick up trash. It's not the best sales line. And I see Bill and Claudia and a bunch of people are laughing. But if you think about it, people want to have, especially millennials, they want to have impact, but they want to have impact in one area. If they care about the environment, they're going to work on the environment. And so we might, in my club, pack food for the hungry and rake leaves and pick up trash. But if somebody wants to have an impact in another area, my club wouldn't be a fit. So sometimes it's good to go out to those people of action, find out what they want and have them start their cause. And if you think about it, at least here in the US, if I wanted to start a nonprofit organization, I'd have to file paperwork with their Secretary of State's office. If I wanted tax exempt status, I'd have to file a 1023 application with the IRS to get that. I'd have to raise the money, plan the projects. You know, in Rotary, you could be a magnet and you can start your own nonprofit by just starting a club. I mean, we have a 117-year stellar reputation. We have the Rotary Foundation, which is a 5-star Charity Navigator rating. You can get loans from that. When we started a Veterans Club, within 3 weeks, they got a $20,000 grant and they redid the bottom floor of a homeless shelter for veterans. These clubs reach out into the community. The club that Virginia was talking about, the first ever club to end human trafficking. Now, a couple of weeks after we started that club, Virginia, you might remember this, but we were inducting a woman from Turkey. And we were excited because we didn't have a member from Turkey at that time in our club. Well, 20 minutes after that, I received a call from Mark Maloney, and he was the then sitting Rotary International president. And what he told me was he confided that that was his sister that we just inducted. He had been trying to get her into Rotary for 40 years, 4 decades, but we just didn't have a club that fit her need because she was a school teacher in Turkey. She was busy during the day. She wanted to meet online at night and on the weekends, and she wanted to focus just on human trafficking. And partnership opportunities, this is when we reach out into the community and we actually form an organization. You know, when we started the Environmental Rotary E-Club for Rotaractors, and that these new clubs that could be Rotaract clubs or they can be Rotary clubs. You could also have a cause-based satellite club, which is what Bill is trying to form. And when we started that club, we were able to start it pretty quickly because when you partner up with another organization, first of all, you get more diversity, but also you get more people that may not be familiar with Rotary. So that's Lloyd there on the right and my friend Linda. And we were at a state fair and we were starting the Rotary Club for Minnesota veterans. So all the pictures that you'll see tonight, they're not stock photos. These are actual photos of people who are just regular people that are now Rotarians. So when you start a cause-based club, one of the best things you could do, and really the first thing is you need to find a champion, somebody who's the spark plug. And the way I define a spark plug is it's not a perfectionist who's sitting on the side. And we all have that perfectionist part of us. We want everything to be perfect and we don't want to jump in until everything's perfect. Well, a spark plug jumps in and then just perfects along the way. And you know, the best example I could think of that is Virginia, when she started the new club there in your area. She was the person who brought these people together, and she understands why she was starting that club. And if you can get a local Rotarian to help, we had a general here that helped us start, and it's always good to have that credibility. And you have to recruit the right members. So, you know, that's often people say, well, where do I find members? Well, the members you find are usually the people that you know, your friends, you know, the people who you work with, the people that you work out with, exercise with, the people you worship with, you know, because they already know you're a Rotarian. You wear the Rotary logos and the lapel pins. And you could start with family members. And it's important also not to forget about diversity. It's funny, our organizations and our clubs are stronger when we have diverse opinions. Especially young people, they want to serve in an environment that's a diverse environment. And you think about it, we had this club, these are action oriented people because they used to serve in the military. And our membership chairs were two ladies. They were both named Kathy. One was in the Army and one was in the Navy. So their nicknames were Kathy Army and Kathy Navy. And they were very good about saying we need to grow by consciously finding if these people are a good fit for our culture, if they think the same things we do. Well, the president and the president-elect, they were both in the Army. They were 82nd Airborne, and they were going to grow that club, and they were going to have a couple hundred people or more by the end of the year. And Kathy Army and Kathy Navy said, no, we just have to be more careful. Well, what was the right answer? It was a combination of the two. So that's why it's good to have that kind of diversity. So one thing when you're starting a club, especially if you're talking to president-elects, their job is to grow their club and to do all the things for their club. But they're always concerned that they're what we call in the US poaching. Like you're going to take members of a current club to start a new club. I see the head shaking. So I got this so often that I went to Brian King, who's the Rotary International Director of Membership Development. I said, Brian, do we have any data whatsoever that when a new club starts, are we really taking just old Rotarians and putting them into a new club? So they didn't have a study, so they went out and studied all the clubs that started for the last 5 years. And what they found out is that 88% of members of a new club, charter members of a new club, are new to Rotary. I know you could argue that the other 12% might have left Rotary if we didn't start that club. I wish I could say I was some visionary founder of the first ever club to end human trafficking, but it really didn't work that way. In that particular club, what happened was we had an initiative with 3 different Rotary districts, and it was going well after a couple of years, at least I thought so. And then the primary people in that initiative came to us and said, hey, we're going to quit Rotary. It's like, why can you can't quit Rotary. They said, Tom, you don't understand. We don't have district grants. We don't have global grants. We might get one speaker, a quarter in one club, but we don't have projects. We don't have enough speakers. So I said, start your own club. And Patricia Borden, what do you think they said when I said start your own club? What do you think they said? You're on mute.
I have no idea what they said.
What would you say if I said, Patricia, start your own club?
I'd say, tell me more about it.
That is fantastic. Unfortunately, they weren't as good as Patricia. They said, it's hard. We can't do it. And I said, yes, you can do it. And they said, well, will you help? And I said, of course we'll help. And they said, well, can we find the members? So long story short, they were going to leave Rotary, but they didn't. They stayed in because we started a new club. We just started our Pride Club, started 2 weeks ago. They have 35 members. They had a meeting last night. My wife went, had a great time. 33 of those members are new to Rotary. The 2 that we helped get started, they were leaving Rotary and they decided to stay. So when you start a club, that's Kathy Army on the far left, and that's Kathy Navy sitting in front of me. When you start a club, it's best to start in small groups, because when you start with small groups, people tend to find things they have in common. Like, what day do we want to meet? What do we want our service projects to be like? What do we want our socials to be like? If you start in big groups, it seems to be a little bit more divisive. And remember, it's all about the service. People join Rotary because they want to make a difference in the world. They want to serve people. So, when I used to start talking about this, especially the Veterans Club, people would say, oh, so I'll get a group together. I'll get a group of teachers together. I'll get a group of firefighters together. Well, it's not so much that we were getting veterans together. We are very inclusive when it comes to membership. We invite everyone. So not everyone in the Veterans Club is a veteran. Their administrator, Mark Shockey, his son-in-law is active military. So he just joined for his son-in-law. Our head sheriff, he was just very responsible for a large group of people who worked for him, who a lot of them had been in the military. So he wanted to show respect for them. So exclusive when it comes to the type of service, but you're inclusive in who you invite. So if you want to bring teachers together, you're more likely to do that if it's to end illiteracy or another passion that they're working. So it's not about who they are, it's about who they want to serve. So the biggest mistake that a lot of people make when they start a club is they want it to be just like their club. So what I learned is you can't go in and say, okay, Rotary Club should meet Tuesday morning. Because you think about it, in the new clubs that have formed over the last couple of years, most of them don't meet Monday through Friday like our traditional clubs do. They usually don't meet at breakfast or at lunch. They don't even meet around a meal. Most of them meet online like we are tonight, or tonight for some of us, morning for some of us. But they meet online, and they also usually meet like a Tuesday and Wednesday or on a weekend. There's a club in England called Maidenham Bridge, and they meet the first and third Sunday at a coffee shop. So there's no fixed price meal, so that's not a barrier to entry. And they also bring their partners with them and bring their children. So the Rotarian partners play bridge and the kids, play together. So remember, it's what they want to do. You do have to secure some funds, but it's not difficult. You could have a sponsoring club. It used to be when we started clubs, it was always the oldest, most established, usually the largest club in a district would start a club, and it would be a young professionals club. But what we realized is why that was happening is because the sponsoring club was taking the initiative to start that. Well, there can be in our country, let's say the Black Hills of South Dakota, there might not be a lot of population there, but they could have a nature club or a pollinator club. So what you can do is you could actually have different clubs fund that. What we did in our district was a little bit different. What we did is we started a pro-growth policy. So what we said was, when you're a DGE and you're setting your budget, district governor-elect, you base it on the number of clubs and the income that comes in from your existing number of clubs. What we decided to do is, if a club starts, we won't charge them any district dues for a whole year. So that gets people excited. And when you're starting a club, Bill, when you go to your veterans and they say, well, you just want us for our money, you just want us for our members, you can give them why you have skin in the game. Our district showed that by having this policy. You could also, and I suggest that you get all the clubs in your area excited about the new club. You could have one club for the chartering event, invite everybody, but you could have a club that's not the club being formed, donate the bell or the gavel or the name tags or the pull-up banners, and then everyone's kind of got a stake in it and everyone gets excited about it. Then you hold your organizational meetings. You don't have to rent a facility. You can find the bottom of a worship facility. I always thought it's a good idea, if you're a district or a club, to have a PowerPoint just so they know how to run a meeting. You don't have to force your format on them, but they just want to have a feeling of how to do that. You can choose your officers, do that kind of stuff. So then you file the paperwork once you get your 20 members, but it's not really difficult. There's 5 things listed in here and they're not hard. There's a simple application fee. For a Rotary Club, it's 4 pages. For a satellite club or for a Rotary Club, it's only 3 pages. And really the last page of each of those applications is just a list where you list the members and the informational data about them. You'll have to name officers. Usually you have people sign up for president. The one that's sometimes hard is the Rotary Foundation chair, because if you remember, we said that most people are new to Rotary, 88%. So if they don't know anything about the Rotary Foundation, that one might take a little bit of explaining to get. If you're in the United States, a lot of times in order to get a bank account, you may decide to make a corporate entity, so you file paperwork with the Secretary of State's office. But I would wait until after your entity is formed, because my experience is when you file the paperwork, sometimes they might tweak it. Like our Veterans Club, they put comma Minnesota, USA, because they thought there might be ones that formed after, and they were right. The Constitution, you don't have to draft, and I would suggest you don't draft. This is one of the mistakes I made. I drafted a whole club constitution. And what I found out is Rotary International's got blank forms, and they just write in on the top line the name of the club. So of those 5 things that I listed, one of them you don't have to tender at all, because Rotary International will do that for you. Bylaws you will have to draft. And for cause-based clubs, when you're starting a new club, sometimes if you have that passionate champion, the person like the Virginia, the spark plug, sometimes you might want to draft your bylaws to have that person be president for the first 2 years, because when a club's up and starting, they need a little bit more of a runway to get going. And if you think you're going to have satellite clubs, you might want to address that in your bylaws. As long as it's not prohibited, you can have it. And if it is prohibited in your bylaws, you can change the bylaws. So remember I said the last page of that application is a membership list? Well, the good news is nowadays, if you ask club and district support, they'll actually give you a spreadsheet. You could just fill out that spreadsheet. So you won't have to fill out 20 individual forms. You can just type it out on the spreadsheet. One thing I learned is as soon as you get your members in, type it out then. You don't want to have to type out every single charter member if it's 20, 30, 40, 50 when you're trying to fill out the application. And it's just simple things. Do you want your RI magazine in paper or do you want it online? So the only cost that's really involved with RI is a processing fee, and it's $15 per member. You can get your district to pay for that. You can have a sponsoring club pay for that. The key is once you submit your application, you'll find out the first 15 are easy to get, then it's hard to get the last 5. But then after you get the last 5, everyone knows it's going to happen. You get a bunch more. Once you tender it with RI, you shouldn't add anybody until after you charter. You can still call them charter members at your chartering event, but they will have to restart the process of application if everything doesn't match up right. So you start your club, you're excited. A lot of folks would say, okay, I've done it. I'm done nothing to do after that. But it's really important actually to have a party to celebrate. Again, this is our Veterans Club. And why is it so important? Well, first, a lot of people worked hard to get it going, but this is a chance to share that new club with not only the new members, but their family members. And really, that's low-hanging fruit. Maybe that's fruit already on the ground that you could just pick up and bring into your club. And it's also a great time to invite TV stations, newspapers, things like that, because you'll be amazed when you have a cause-based club. It's not like the forming of a regular club. The newspapers and things love to hear inspirational stories about these. So then when you start, in order to keep the club going and keep it vibrant, you have to do projects. And what a cause-based club is, you want to match up those projects with the cause they're doing. Again, this is the Minnesota Veterans. Remember I said they got a $20,000 grant? I love these new clubs because they do things that we as Rotarians who have been Rotarians for years wouldn't do. Like they asked the Elks Club for $1,000 and they got $1,000 from the Elks Club. That's something I would have never thought to do. I'd ask another Rotary Club, but I didn't think about doing that. But these are mission-driven people. I mean, this particular club, people drive over 2 hours to go to their fundraisers when they do it. And they just don't have a blood drive. When they have a drive, they have a blood drive, a food drive, a code drive, a small electronics drive. They do all of it all at once because that's just the kind of people they are. So Virginia wanted me to talk a little bit about the different kinds of clubs and club models. And we're not going to go into a lot of detail on this, but just to give you an idea what you can start. You can start a Rotary Club. That takes currently 20 people to start. A Rotaract Club, which is a recommended 12, but you can really get by with 10 or maybe even less, depending if it just has to be approved by club and district support. And a satellite club, which really isn't a club. They call it a satellite club, but it's really just a part of the sponsoring club, part of your current club. They just meet at a different time, sometimes at a different place. And then there's all kinds of models. With those clubs, you can have an alumni-based club. That's maybe bring in youth exchange or people who used to be Global Exchange or people who used to be Rotex or Peace Fellows. Interest-based clubs are basically like a cause-based club, but it's around an interest, maybe exercise or cooking or a corporate club. So there's just different kind of club models, but anything really goes. So in 1 minute or less, I'm going to tell you the 8 things I learned about starting clubs by telling you the mistakes I made when forming these clubs. When we formed our Twin Cities Eco Club, it took a long time because we would go out, we'd recruit 1 member. And then by the time we get another member 2 months later, the first member had gone away. So if you decide to do this, get some folks together, some influencers, and jump right in both feet and make it work. Because it's painful if you want it to take a long time. It's easier just to do it fast. So you too can start a club. Maybe this is the most important lesson of any lesson I've learned. I'm not a veteran. I never was a veteran. We don't have an active or defunct military base anywhere in our state. So I like to say, if Gump could do it, you can too. And it's true. I wasn't a veteran, but we started this club. So just think what you can do. And it's so much fun when you start a club. That club calls me dad. They call me that nickname because we have that special bond. And it's a great way for you to leave a legacy in Rotary. These clubs actually reach out in our community. We actually bring in people that wouldn't known a Rotary before. You know, it's interesting because Rotary, we know what great things we do. We know about our service projects. We know that we help form the United Nations, that we're going to eradicate polio. But other people, some people see us as people who just go to breakfast or go to lunch and have a meeting and listen to a speaker. But when they find out what we do, if we start inviting people to these new clubs and let them, form their own club, it really does reach out in a way that it doesn't usually otherwise. The other thing that I think we can't overlook is these new clubs actually help with diversity. You know, when I was governor, we had a goal that we were going to increase the percentage of women in our district. And this had been a goal for years before, but we never did it. But we made a conscious effort and we did it. And after we looked at it, because our district governor line wanted to keep on doing that. And you know what we found out? We found out that the majority of our female membership, and during my year as governor, we went from 30% female to more than 32% female. And our international goal for this year coming up, our RI President-elect Jennifer Jones wants to go from 28%, that's a worldwide number of females in Rotary, to 30% by the end of this coming up year, and then eventually to gender parity, which will be 50%. But what we found out as we looked at the growth, we brought in 80 new females, but more than 52% of the Eco Club was female members. For the End Human Trafficking Club, it was over 60% females. And then the Network for Empowering Women was close to 70% females. So what we're finding out, we don't do racial studies when it comes to how many of a particular race are in a club, because that's sensitive under US law. We do ask the question about gender. But when you look at a screen, and it's a club that started in the last couple of years, there's a lot more diversity than you would see in the typical, most of our clubs that have been around for anywhere from 20 to over 100 years. We also found out that if you use alumni, you can grow a new club quicker. Now, I had a friend here, Paula. She was an audiologist. She owned a building right down the street from my office building. She sold her business a year ago and she moved to Florida. So she joined her club in Florida. And for those of you not in the US, that's like the Southeast. Minnesota's below the Canadian border in the middle, kind of near the top or at the top. Paula went to Florida. She joined her local Rotary Club. And, Paula became a friend of mine because we went together to Honduras to do a freshwater project, to do some wells. And she was passionate about international service. I actually made her our international service chair when I was president of our club. Well, she went down to Florida and her local club only did local service, didn't do any international service. So she quit. I said, well, Paula, you need to start your own club. And Karma McKay, what did she say? What did Paula say when I said you should start your own club?
I don't know how.
Yes. And she said it was hard, but she was wrong. It was easy. And then she said, well, where do I get my members? And I said, your friends. And she says, I don't have any friends. I just moved to Florida. But Paula had traveled all over the world on global study exchanges, on friendship exchanges, doing all these projects. She had tons of friends. So we brought in those friends. And then my family likes to do youth exchange. So my wife and I reached out to other individuals who were host families, but we couldn't get them into our Rotary clubs because they were busy with their own kids. But now, 2 years later, their kids are in college or university, so they had more time. We brought them in. And we brought a Peace Fellow in. So anyways, it's a thriving club. It's doing really well. They got projects planned for Cambodia and Vietnam. But it's just easy to do. The other thing about these new clubs is they also have associate members, because in Rotary, you can only belong to one club You could be an honorary member, but you can only belong to one club at a time. What we found out is in the Global Travelers, we had a lot of spouses or partners of Rotarians, and they didn't want to be in the same club as their partner. So they joined this Global Travelers. So we have a lot of, when we look at a screen, because it's an e-club, there's a lot of partners. You get two in most squares instead of one. This is the Rotaract e-club for the environment. So when you started this, and it only took a few months to start this club, you know, there's a Rotary Action Group. It's called SRAG, Environmental Sustainability Rotary Action Group. So action groups, they help people plan out projects, tell people how to fund projects, but they don't actually do projects. So we called them up and said, do you have any young people who really want to get their hands dirty, dig in the dirt, actually go out, get those grants and actually do projects? So they gave us a list of 120 people who were under 30, and we called them up and we got about 30 of them to start a club, and they're in 20 different countries around the world. Now this club doesn't meet like my club. They don't meet in person, they meet online. My club, traditional club, they send emails primarily. That's our main way of communicating. This group deals in WhatsApp. But the point is, there's people out there. I mean, if you think about it, we have 1.2 million Rotarians when we include our Rotaractors, which do now 1.4, but we've been on that number since 1996. And during that same time in 1996, we had the average club size was about 60. Nowadays, the average club size is just under 30. Why then are we still at this 1.4? Well, it's because we started new clubs. So there's three ways to grow Rotary. We could grow our current clubs by bringing new members, which is great. We could retain our members as a second way. You know, retention, comfort them, make sure they're happy, deliver the product we promised to. Or we can start new clubs, and they're all important. But with these cause-based clubs, most of them are starting new clubs just because it's hard to change a culture, right? And a club culture is made up of people. And so to change that culture, we have to change people. And sometimes that's difficult. You know, sometimes it's easier just to start a new club, especially with these cause-based clubs, because you have that magnet that draws people together. You know, I've heard it said that it's easier to give birth than to raise the dead. So sometimes, not in all clubs, but some clubs, you know, you could turn them around by adding a cost to it. Or maybe you just start a club on the side that just deals with the club. So I'd like Lloyd, who's on the call right now, to tell you about the Kaleidoscope Rotaract Club, which he was the primary spark plug for.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you very much for that. I hope everyone can hear me. I've been on mute so long that it's sort of difficult to realize that people can actually hear what I'm saying. The Rotaract Club for us started just before the pandemic, and it was a combination of dealing with an organization, which was MICC, is a school here in Minnesota that focuses on kids with autism. And it just so happened that my son is also autistic. So I went to the school and started talking. I was actually trying to talk to several of the administrators to become Rotarians. Because one of the things that I found out is that the prior head of the school was also a Rotarian. But she retired, and everyone moves to Florida, and she also moved to Florida. So in that process, we were talking about the different types of clubs that we have. And the thing that popped up was a Rotaract Club for autistic individuals. At this time, this school had about 100 members in their community program. Those are people who've graduated from the school that could benefit from a Rotaract Club. So the head of the school suggested that they would provide a space for them to meet, and also things for us to do. And all we had to do was actually, start to get members to be a part of it. So we went out and started looking for people to be part of the organization. The interesting thing about it was that we knew we had a set number of people who would be part of the Rotaract Club, the Kaleidoscope Club. But once we sent the word out throughout our organization, we had the opportunity to find people who were autistic in their 60s, diagnosed when they were in their late 40s. So they were able to function quite well through society, but were diagnosed later on as being autistic. One person in particular actually became the president of the organization. So the thing that we learned from this is that if you partner with an organization and put the word out about a particular cause, you might find out that when you think it's something hard to do, it's actually pretty easy to do. It's important that you get the word out, and also that you collaborate with an organization that has the same vision that you have around a cause. We are not as large as we would like to, but we are coming out of the pandemic. The school is, I guess, in a sense, out of lockdown now, and we see this as a bright step in the right direction, and that the club will continue to grow. So, Tom, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to talk about the Kaleidoscope Club.
Well, thank you, Lloyd. Appreciate that. You know, one of the other things we learned is you could be creative if a problem arises. When we were starting the Minnesota Pride Rotary Club, every time you start a club, it's mostly easy, but every once in a while you run into a roadblock. And they wanted to have the name their club Minnesota Pride. Well, it turns out that there was a football team named Minnesota Pride. So, you know, we ended up, instead of just giving up, we went to them and got a memorandum of understanding that we could use the name. And now the woman who owns that club is now a member of our club. And Virginia, I'm sure you could tell your own stories about when you formed a club and how important it is to be persistent. So what did all these clubs have in common? And we're going to wrap it up and get to my favorite part, which is answering your questions. Well, you had a passionate champion. You had a lot of friendship and camaraderie. That's very important in any club you start. There was a shared desire among the charter members to actually do service. Again, they don't want to be a part of something that doesn't do it. They want to be part of something that's going to change the world. Most of these things started with friends and people that you know. We just had to ask them, you know, I have friends in my club who can't come to my club because it meets at 7:30 and they want to take their children to the bus stop or they're at work. And we found out there's a new Nurturing New Clubs module in the Learning Center. And what the studies show is that a new club is 42% more likely to thrive if it's supported by a district or a club. Where are the opportunities? Well, you know, you heard about some of them today. You know, environmental clubs, there's 15 of those around the world. And human trafficking. Virginia, I think there's about 8 now, something like that. Veterans Club, there's almost a dozen. We're starting one in Australia right now. Australia's got 2 homelessness clubs are starting. But really, anywhere that you can serve and serve people, you can have a club. So now, do we have time, Virginia, Mike, to take questions?
Yes, absolutely. And Tom, thank you. What a beautifully composed and thorough presentation. I love the pictures. There is one little thing that I want to add to your whole presentation, if you will forgive me, because it was so perfect. But the one thing that I found, and you're probably finding it too, is that these cause-based clubs are bringing people back to Rotary. We had 23 members that we chartered with, and 3 of them were people that had left Rotary and came back. And so I don't know if Rotary's capturing any of those statistics, but I think that's a really powerful data point. And by the way, those people coming back to Rotary, these are people who already know Rotary, and they make awesome leaders and officers. My president-elect here is on the call, Susanna Southworth. She was a member of Des Moines Normandy Park, and came back specifically because this was a cause-based club that appealed to her and her profession now. So If you have any comments or questions, please raise your digital hand so we can call on you in order. And to find your digital hand, you go down to the bottom of the screen and there's a smiley face with reactions, and you just raise your hand.
So Virginia, we did find out what you said is true in our district. There's no international studies on it, but what we're finding out is the growth, at least the percentage of growth, is higher in the new clubs than it is in our traditional clubs. So where our traditional clubs seem to be declining overall, that's a gross generalization, but overall they seem to be declining. The new cause-based clubs seem to be growing at a steady rate. I see Karma's got her hand up.
I do. This was a fantastic presentation. Thank you. And hopefully I didn't step out at the wrong time. Mothers with dementia can demand a call, an answer to the phone. Sorry.
Yes,
So it seems to me that, and my knowledge is limited here, but I've watched Virginia's club grow and is doing great things. And I've seen some other clubs grow not so well. It seems like the key difference is both having Rotarians who are excellent honorary members to be key advisors, as well as a Rotarian who's willing to lead that first year, to kind of train all these new people who know nothing about Rotary but are passionate about a cause. Is that accurate?
that is very accurate. We talked about nurturing, and having those honorary members is important. I mean, Virginia made me an honorary member, and now I'm talking about her club all over the world. So
There you go.
but it does help. Our Pride Club has a gentleman who was president twice of his club. And I mean, their charter event, they raised $12,000 just because he knew how to ask for money, and he knew that it was important to ask for money. And that's just one example. Money's not everything, but they seem to understand. The honorary member could tell you how to run a TRF campaign, the Rotary Foundation campaign, or they can tell you whether or not it's important to take attendance or not take attendance.
Mhm.
Does that
And
answer your question? Yeah.
I think so. I think it would also be prudent, and I'm going to throw this out because I know Virginia so well, and that is to somehow let the people within the district who have been long-term members know that they would be great mentors, whether they're a part of the club or not. Because for somebody like me, I would love to talk about Rotary to people that are brand new and might have questions.
Wonderful.
Just a comment. Okay, thank you.
Good. Thank you for that comment. We'll take Bill, then we'll have Meanne, and then we'll go to Susanna.
Thank you, Tom. Really appreciate your words today. It gave a lot of food for thought. Specifically about veterans, how do you talk to veterans about why they should be in a Rotary Club as opposed to or in addition to their own existing veterans organizations?
Well, that's a very good question. I'm really glad that you asked it. It's interesting. It's whenever you talk to a group, Bill, and it's hard to put everything in just a half an hour or 40 minutes. But when you talk to someone about starting a club, you have to let them know what's in it for them. And, these veterans, they were suspicious, more so than the average group when you started. And so we had to let them know their cause was important. So we put service of the vets first. Now, when we started forming the Rotary Club, when we started saying, veterans, which I didn't know, important to them is peace. We had a visioning group where we brought all these people together, about 50 of them, and we brought in an outside facilitator. We asked them what was the most important thing. And I never saw such a bonding that they had, because they all thought the same things. Doesn't matter if they're the Army or Marines or Air Force, they all wanted the same things. And there were three of them. There was peace, there was camaraderie, and there was service. And actually the Air Force had a similar saying to service above self that they followed. So we put service of veterans first. But when we started telling them that we were going to cure polio, and we started telling them that we had representatives as delegates to the first United Nations, they started becoming Rotarians. And they were Rotarians with a capital R before that club started. But we're all passionate about Rotary, but we have to put their cause first, and then the rest follow. Now, why did they need to join Rotary? Because some of them belong to the VFW, Veterans of Foreign Wars, or the American Legion. But what they found there is it was just social. So they got to go and they got to share a drink. If they had a problem, they went, they had a drink, and they talked to somebody about it. But what they really wanted to do is they wanted to serve veterans. And when they do service, they do clothing drive, but it's for the veterans. They do blood drives, it's for the veterans. Not saying that they don't serve in the 5 avenues of service. They serve children by Toys for Tots and things like that, but they want to serve veterans, and those other veterans organizations don't do the service component. So that's why they're such good Rotarians. And Bill, I know that you know this, but when you go to a lot of clubs, it's those veteran members that are the first there and the last there and the ones that do the cleanup. So why not give them what they want? Now, they do partnerships with other clubs. During the holidays, they go with our Brooklyn Park Club and they write cards to the active military. There's several clubs that have built veterans memorials, so they help clean those up or expand those. So there's a lot of partnership opportunities, but they just want to do things that serve veterans more than, other kinds of service.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mayanne asks, if a Rotarian wants to organize a cause-oriented club of which the Rotarian is the champion for the cause, should the Rotarian leave her original club and join a new club? So I'm really glad you brought this question out, Mayanne. It's a great question. And I actually drafted legislation that I was going to tender to this last council on legislation. That's our parliament where we do laws. And I wanted to say that you could belong to 2 clubs. Well, I wanted to be a good little soldier. So I talked to membership staff before I introduced it, and they said that would cause all kinds of problems when it comes to things like the Rotary Foundation. If I gave $100,000, is that because I'm part of the Veterans Club, or is that because I'm part of the Edina Morningside Rotary Traditional Club? So, but it's interesting you asked that question, Yan, because the new clubs that we started, they all have some form of that. The Global Travelers we talked about, they have this associate member, and Lloyd and I are both associate members, which means we can't run for office, but we get invited to all the parties and all the service projects. The Network for Empowering Women has friends of the club. So people who are in other clubs, but still are passionate about empowering women. So they just pay a little fee and they're part of it. And you could, as a club, decide what rules you want to them to have or not to have, but that's a big component. But right now you could only, there's 12 different third-party service providers, DACDB, Club Runner, all that, but they only recognize, and that flows up to Rotary, members or honorary members. For active members, of course, there's inactive members. So Susanna, did you have a question, man? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that answers my question. Thank you, Tom. In our club, we have 2 causes and we have 2 champions for autism and breast cancer.
Oh, wonderful. And I've been to your breast cancer seminar that,
Yes.
that
Thank you.
RI President Jennifer Jones was at. Mayanne supported me when my sister was going through breast cancer. So.
I think
Susanna?
Hi, good evening. I apologize for joining late. I teach at Pacific Lutheran University, and I teach until 5:25 normally on these days. And I'm a human trafficking attorney. I have the privilege of working alongside my friend and colleague Virginia McKenzie, learning from her, and as president-elect this year for Rotary of the Pacific Northwest Ending Sex Trafficking. And I was wondering, our club we attend meetings on Zoom, so a virtually based club. At our service projects are, of course, in person, just supporting, focusing on supporting organizations in the Pacific Northwest region that provide services to survivors of sex trafficking. And so I'm wondering if you could offer some wisdom on how to connect all of these different organizations in the Seattle area in particular that are just doing great work, and they're disconnected even. And now we're coming into the picture and we're trying to and are serving all of these different organizations, but I want to try to bring us all together because we have the same goal as a mission-based club with all of these organizations. So connection with non-Rotary service organizations that share our same goal, and then kind of with that, the secondary part of that question is to get membership buy-in in facilitating that connection when we're on a Zoom format most of the time together. So disconnection because of technology, disconnection because there's so many organizations with the similar goal to end sex trafficking in the Pacific Northwest. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a compound, complex question, and it's it's not easy to answer. But I'm going to take it in reverse order because I think logistically answering that reverse will explain a pathway forward. So I think what you do in your own club is maybe, and this is to answer your second part about buy-in from the club members, especially when there's geographical diversity and diversity in different types of clubs, not just Rotary, but others. So I think if you think about it as a circle, maybe start with an assessment. And that might be just a club survey. It might be talking to people. You know, your club is relatively not too large. It's not 400 people or anything. So you could talk to them and get that buy-in, you know, and you have to nurture the people who, well, first of all, you do it, you find out what you want to do. Then you find out who the influencers are in your club, the people who can actually change and be respected. Then you have to communicate that change. When you start, and I might have to draw this all out after and send it to you, but after you communicate the change, then what you have to do is you have to let the people who don't feel good about it, if you're going too fast, you may alienate them, but nurture them and let them know, find out what their concerns are, and then give them examples of the other end human trafficking clubs that are doing what you're trying to do. And then go ahead and implement the change, do more nurturing, and then do reassessment and keep on going in that circle. Now, how do you do this with other organizations? You know, so many times, and this is hard for me because I'm a membership kind of guy, you can sometimes have to focus on the service and not just the membership. So if you find out what the other organizations that are trying to end human trafficking or end sex trafficking, get those people to do the same thing that you're talking about. And then don't try to merge everyone all together all at once, but pick a day or pick a week in the Seattle area that you're going to focus on this and get everyone working together. Now, it's funny, it's almost like if you have an analogy of a club, the club doesn't know that it's growing. You know, like I was saying, we pick up trash, and we did on Saturday, but you know what I saw? I didn't see anyone bringing their friends or other families and their kids to do service projects with us. So what I'm suggesting to you, Susanna, is have everyone, you know, pick 4 or 5 organizations that you think are, you know, you can get somewhere with, have them do the assessment, then pick a day, the week of April 20th, 2023, that week we're going to do service projects all together so we have a visible impact all together. Now, what that does is you do that for a couple of years, then you're going to start seeing strategic partnerships where you can get together and do things. So it's a step-by-step process. And to be fair to everyone on the call, we probably can't talk about this one issue for a long time, but maybe we get on a separate Zoom and we can plan it all out. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And I'm sorry if I'm not calling these in order, but Philip, Philip Smiley's got a question.
Well, I'd say it's more of a comment than a question. I once heard a fellow that said, I'd like to give an award for somebody who does an amazing job of executing somebody else's idea. And what I noticed from attending most of these sections is that we've got people all over the place, especially in districts 5030. We even got a guy from Dr. Bindu from India on this call. But I'm specifically thinking like the human trafficking. It's a very interesting thing to support. And with an established Rotary Club, we're all about service. So if you've got things and you're in a district, you can make those open to other clubs. And what could be simpler, now your club has an event that you don't have a plan. You just go in and see and you say, if you want some help, you say what you're going to do and ask other clubs to participate. I think they'd be more than happy to.
Yes,
I think you're right, Philip. I think that's wonderful. And
that's my master plan. That is my master plan, is once we get organized, we're gonna have a calendar of service projects, and it's gonna be open to everybody in the district, and not just our district, but north and south and Kitsap. And furthermore, any Rotary Club that wants help identifying a service project to address preventing human trafficking or restoring people's lives after it happens, I will have a personal consult with that Rotary Club and connect you with a meaningful project in your neighborhood. That is absolutely my master plan. That's like my 3-year plan.
Now, are you 50/30 Virginia?
Yes, I'm located in Seattle. We're supported by 50/30, but our region is roughly the Puget Sound area. I have members from Gig Harbor to Oak Harbor.
Amazing. You know, I know Kate Peterson, and then I saw Kim Harris the other day that's going to be your chief of staff. What a little fireball, I'll tell you.
so we have time for one more question. Because I see Meanne has a question in the chat box, which I think would be a great question to close on. She says, we have 7 areas of focus. Should a cause-oriented club be limited to its area of focus? So as we said, a cause-based club could be around any focus. You know, at one point in time, Rotary didn't have a focus on the environment. Then we did, then we didn't, now we do again. But we've always done service in the environment. And I just want people to think about Meanne's question. You know, if we really want to grow Rotary, then we have 1.4 million, but if we had a club for everyone in the world, we would have tens of millions, we'd have billions, lots of Rotary clubs. So I think Meanne brought up a good idea, because if we could imagine, and that's what Jennifer Jones wants us to do, imagine what Rotary could be. Imagine if your district could actually have a cause-based club for every area of focus. I mean, that would be 7 new clubs. At 20, you would be growing. Imagine if you had a club that was focused on Rotary alumni, like we talked about the Global Travelers. We have people in Rotary, and we've all met them, who've had life-changing experiences because of Rotary, like going away on an exchange for a year. I've never seen so much energy at a club as when someone has gone away for a year and they come back and tell their story. Or what happens if we just reach out to the people in Seattle and elsewhere around the world? And Dr. Bindu, thank you for coming from India. There was actually a club, Dr. Bindu's country, that I helped form recently, where they, a woman named Sharmila, took her batchmates, which here we call classmates, in our high school, and she formed a club around that. What if we in Seattle reached out to everyone who's left in the last few years and asked them, why did they leave Rotary? And if it's because of a time or a place, or because they didn't have an interest, we ask them and help them form their own Rotary club that fits their schedule and their interests. Just think what Rotary can do then. Thank you so much for having me tonight. And after we log off the filming, I'll be glad to stay around to answer more questions. Thank you.